Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Colleen. Some of us went to hear Judy and Claire and a couple guys playing at Unity a week ago Thursday, and that was really fun to hear them just have at it for a couple hours. So that was really great. So this month we've been talking about this book, The Go-Giver, and 5 laws of stratospheric success. So pretty powerful and kind of an entertaining little book. So the idea then is to prove that we have the ability to, like that song talked about, live, love, and laugh abundantly. And that's, Spirit created us. Spirit experiences life in, through, and as us. Let's give Spirit a good ride. Let's laugh. Let's have joy. Let's be joyful. And, sometimes we just have to remind ourselves, why am I walking around with such a sad face? Life is good, and I'm not meant to be miserable and walk around in sackcloth and ashes and stuff like that. So Ernest Holmes said in the Holmes Reader on Practical Wisdom, he says, life is an eternal givingness, the offering of the cosmic self to the joy of its own fulfillment. You and I are part of that joy, and we find fulfillment only as this joy passes through us to others. Everything moves in circles. We short-circuit our own good when we refuse to pass it on. So that's Holmes. And Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, he says, only those who have learned the power of sincere and selfless contribution experience life's deepest joy, true fulfillment. Sincere and selfless contribution. That's what gives us the joy. Tagore, Eastern philosopher, Debbie said, one thing I like, and I just said it to Joan, I like the fact that we repeat these things. If you're like me, it's important to hear them over and over again. And Tagore says, I dreamt that life was joy, I awoke and life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. I like some of these people, like Tagore. I mean, it's a long time ago, but it seems like he's speaking to us in a language we can understand. So I just want to repeat that. This when we serve, we are opening up to Spirit to act in, as, and through us. And so when that happens, we are going to be automatically filled with joy and love and abundance, etc. So this book that we talked about, again, they talk about these 5 laws for stratospheric success. And I'm just going to review those for you. The first week we talked about the law of value, how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And then the law of compensation, how many people you can serve and how well you serve them. In the book, Joe, our hero, had to, in order for him to learn the next law, he had to implement the law that he just learned. So he learned this law of service, and he didn't really know how he was going to use this, but he goes back to the office, and this woman in the office he had just come from had given him a bag of coffee. Now this book, I love coffee. I love a good cup of coffee, and it talks a lot about coffee. And so in this book, he's given this pound of coffee to take with him. So he's in the office trying to figure out, who am I going to serve? How am I going to serve? He thinks, wait a minute. So he brews up a big pot of coffee, and he pours a cup of coffee for everybody in the office and serves them. So, as we use our imagination and we open to God's guidance, we can figure out how to do these things, how to serve. So that was the law of compensation, how to serve. The law of influence, now this is what Debbie talked about last week. Reverend Debbie just said, there's how abundantly you place other people's interests first. You know, it's something we have to think about sometime. Can I put other people's interests before my own? And then the law of authenticity. I just love people who are authentic. You know, to me, that is the most attractive quality. People that are comfortable in their own skin. So that's the law of authenticity. And then today I'll be talking about the law of receptivity. And so as I said, we're to start implementing these things. You know, this philosophy that we follow is not just about coming here on Sunday, getting a shot in the arm, and then going. We really kind of feel like we have a philosophy that is so practical, so pragmatic, that we live it, and we can embrace it. Not just on Sundays, but this is something we really integrate into our lives. And I think I see it from people in this group, that is what they do. So again, like Joe figured out how to serve, I asked Celeste, where are you, Celeste? I asked Celeste, can you share how you implemented the law of influence that Reverend Debbie talked about and the law of authenticity? And she agreed to do that. So.
Oh, thank you. I got applause before I even speak. Okay, so I'm going to start with the law of influence, this idea of abundance. And sometimes we get stuck in the really big abundance things, right? But sometimes it's just the littlest expression. And that played out for me in my building. There's a common area where there's vending machines and soda machines, you know, snacks and stuff. And I cruise through there thinking I'll find something all the time, but I always walk away, you know, and I pat myself on the back for walking away. It was a particularly hot day. I'm in that common area, and there's a woman, she's sweating profusely, and she's digging around in her purse. You know that dig where you know something's there, but you can't find it? And I made the assumption that she was going to get herself a soda, and I looked at her and I said, you know, I'm feeling really abundant today. Can I buy you a soda? And she just took a deep breath and said yes, which made me feel good that she simply accepted the gift, right? And we sat down for a moment, and I got to see this woman's whole personality transform because I bought her a soda. So it was an absolute, you know, stepping into not only is there enough, but even the little things count. The little ways we show up abundantly. Now, as for the law of authenticity, I said, wait a minute. You know, we're talking, and I'm like, nothing's coming. And she says, well, how about telling them about how you helped me get my TV put together? Well, okay, yeah, that's me showing up authentically to try to help her TV get replugged in and everything like that, mostly for projection, because I can't see being without a TV for as long as she's going to, you know. But the truth is, although I know how to do it, at this time, I'm not strong enough to crawl around and do those things. So the first thing I do is say yes to her, and then I grab my buddy Anthony. So actually, the true hero in this story is Anthony. Because he doesn't know Reverend Joanne that much, and I'm sure that we kind of equally know the same about where to plug things in, but he showed up for me authentically. Celeste, this is important to you. I'll show up and do it. So thank you for giving me the credit. But let's give some love to Anthony for showing up as my arms and partner in crime.
Well, that's a good example of how we actually use these laws. We get tools here, and the idea is to use them. So the fifth law this stratospheric success is the law of receptivity from this book. And every giving can happen only because somebody is receiving. So even though we've talked in the 4 previous laws were about giving, 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 this one is about being receptive. Because as Ernest Holmes says, everything works in a circle. If we do not receive, we're going to clamp up that flow, and that is not what we're going for. I've read a couple examples about this idea of how things work together, and one of them is, and I wouldn't do this because it makes me feel uncomfortable, it's about breathing. And the idea is, you breathe in, then you tell something, okay, now exhale, and I'll count to 30. Well, you're going to run out of air long before I get to 30. That's uncomfortable for me. So, so the idea is, does that mean it's better to inhale than exhale? No, it has to work together, the flow. We breathe in, we breathe out. We call it our breath. And it is the same with giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. Two things that have to happen in order to make this successful. Ernest Holmes says it all moves in a circle. But when we were younger, didn't we hear it's better to give than to receive? I mean, that's Bible passage. And to a degree, that's true. On the other hand, sometimes we can take that too far. There are people, and Colleen was reading about this, that can give, but they're resistant to receiving. And I know people like this, I'm sure you do too. They give and they give and they give. And I'm not going to tell you about this movie I watched. Terrible movie. It's called Dogville. Don't get it. Don't watch it. Terrible movie. Nicole Kidman, she's great, but don't get it. It's just a terrible movie. And it's about her she's kind of dumped in this little town, Dogville, up in the mountains or something like that. She's hiding from bad guys. I don't know who they are. And they're kind to her. They take her in. And so she's trying to give back. And she gives, and she gives, and she gives till it's just like over the top, really. And all of a sudden people aren't appreciating it. They're taking advantage of her in a big way. And this happens. This happens in life. Do you know people like that? They give and give and give until they finally say, why am I stuck with all this, doing all this stuff? Because you wouldn't let anybody help you. Because you always raise your hand. Yeah, I can do it no matter how full your plate is. So at some point, I think it's important for us to think about the importance of being able to receive. And I thought that article said it very well. But some of the other things you might like to consider, perhaps you bought into this overdone idea about it's better to give than to receive, and just kind of forgot about how good it is to be able to receive, and that's doing something to keep that circulation going. Underlying beliefs of your unworthiness. Do we sometimes just think, oh, you shouldn't have, why not? You deserve some goodness. How about sometimes we get this idea, if I'm spiritual, I can't be abundant. Again, it's that I should just be walking around in sackcloth and ashes because I'm a poor, miserable sinner, so nothing good should happen to me. Some of this stuff, I know people like this. I used to be people like this, I think. And the verse, this isn't how the verse goes, but we remember it sometimes, is money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money, the root of all evil. But I think that gets overdone too. It's just like if I'm spiritual, I shouldn't be abundant. It's a false belief that we have kind of been saturated with, some of us, all of our lives. And then there's this idea about thinking about life is like a pie. Oh, if I take that piece of pie, she's not going to get a piece of pie. There's enough pie. There's enough pie. There's enough abundance to go around. So think about where in your life you might have been kind of stuck on some of this stuff that kept you maybe from being a good receiver. There's an author named T. Harv Eker. He wrote a book called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And in this book, he talks about he's going to go camping overnight. And so he goes out, and he's kind of a rough and tumble kind of a guy. So he's got this tarp, and he attaches part of it to a tree, and then the other to the ground. So it's like a lean-to. But the idea is if it rains, he's going to be dry underneath that lean-to. And sure enough, he gets under the lean-to, and it rains, and gets up in the morning, and he and everything under the tarp is dry. But he notices that at the bottom of the tarp, all this rain has accumulated. And he just remembered, this idea that just because we don't receive something, it doesn't mean it isn't given. Somebody's going to get it. And he said, I heard this inner voice that said, nature is totally abundant, but not discriminating. When the rain falls, it has to go somewhere. If one part is dry, another part's going to be doubly wet. That's what he discovered. And that's the way it works. That's the way the universe works. And so he came up with this prayer, which I really like. He said, universe, if anybody has something great coming to them and they're not willing to receive it, send it to me. I am willing and open to receive all of your blessings. Thank you. That's the kind of attitude it would be lovely to develop in our lives. Just be willing to receive. Ernest Holmes says, the Spirit can only give us what we take. And since the taking is an act of consciousness, we must be actively aware of the presence of our desire. We must know that the gift is made even before we see it. Consciousness must receive the gift. So I think it's kind of important for us all to think about affirming and remembering to receive. And maybe a good affirmation is this: I'm a generous giver and an excellent receiver. Just something very simple to remind yourself that this is a good thing. I am open to receive all the good that the universe has for me now. Just to remind yourself, yeah, open up to that good. So these 5 laws of stratospheric success. Again, the law of value. How much more you give in value. Remember, I gave you an example of how a bunch of us ate at Namaste, the restaurant, and how I feel like we got so much value for what we paid. And it wasn't real cheap, but the value we got, the ambiance was nice, the waiters, even though we couldn't understand them because they had this very heavy Indian accent, whatever it was. And by the way, Anthony and Celeste, I don't know if I told you about the guy that came to my house. I had to have a technician come, and he too was from India, and he was just this most darling guy. And I couldn't understand him, but he was so precious. I just wanted to put him in my pocket. He had this big smile on his face from the moment he came in. And what was funny is Anthony and Celeste did all kinds of stuff. They got my Netflix working, but not the TV. And we had gone and bought a new box because that was shot, whatever kind of box it was, and a new remote. And so this guy, and Anthony wrote 2 items that I should tell the technician when he comes. Tell him this, tell him that. So I got my little note, and the guy comes in, and I said, we got a new remote and a new box, and I'm reading the note, and he's doing this. with this remote. And pretty soon he says, okay, you have your TV and you have your Netflix. I mean, we're talking 45 seconds here. But then he said, but I'm not done yet because you're not getting, I think he said maybe a strong enough signal or something like that. And he begins to go into every closet in my house. Unbelievable. I mean, I thought he was taking his life in his hands. He goes into this closet that is dangerous. You know, it's just stuff all over, digging for these cables. Where does this go? I don't know. And honestly, he opened it, and then when we got back into the room where the TV is, you could see the high definition was just so much better. So, but the value he gave, and he told me, he said, now I didn't have to do this. I'm getting paid the same whether, you know, I got that 45 seconds done on your, or if I did all this stuff with the cable, I'm getting paid. He said, so when you do the survey, give me a 10. He says, by the way, if you give me a 9, anything under a 9 is fail. Just so you know. But anyway, value. And then of course the law of compensation, how many people can you serve? And I have to just share this with you. You know, again, I'm kind of a coffee lover, and this book was not only that story, how the lady gave him, they always served him this good coffee when he went to see his mentor. But then they gave him the pound of coffee to take with him. And then, I don't want to spoil the end of the book, but the coffee ends up being a whole entity of itself, a successful venture in this book. So I wake up in the morning, woke up, and I oftentimes do this, you know, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I wake up, and I smell coffee. And it's not coming from my kitchen. And people in our building don't get up that early. Really, I mean, a lot of them don't get up that early at all. I'm thinking, what? And I've thought of this before, where does that smell? I mean, the nearest caribou is close to a mile away. Where does that smell come from? And, you know, in my fuzziness in that morning time when I woke up, I thought, what if heaven is just on the other side of the veil and they're making this really good coffee, and as people go to heaven, they get this excellent coffee all the time. I'm not sure how it works, but but it is kind of amazing to me that I wake up to that. I can smell this coffee. So value, compensation, or how will we serve, the influence, do we put other people's interests first, and the law of authenticity, just giving of yourself, like both Celeste and Anthony did, just gave them themselves. Their time, came over, crawled around on my floor, whatever. and then this law of receptivity. I don't think I was going to tell you all those stories. But I like that. I mean, waking up at 4:30 in the morning and smelling that coffee, it really is a mystery to me. So what I'd like you to do now, if you like, is just take a deep breath. Get comfortable where you are. And just know there's no other place you need to be right now. I'm going to say the spiritual mind treatment, which is an affirmative prayer. I'm going to say it in the first person like it's for me, but just know it's also for you. And I know that there's just but one power in the universe, and that power is a power of peace and love and joy and abundance, balance and order. It's a power that has the perfect solution to any perceived dilemma in my life. And I know I'm one with that power, that very power that created everything, and everyone experiences life in, through, and as me, in, through, and as its creation. And even though I've sometimes bought into the overdone idea of it's better to give than to receive, even though I sometimes think you can't be spiritual and abundant at the same time. Sometimes I believe I'm unworthy. Sometimes I buy into that idea that money is the root of all evil. And even though maybe I've done some of these things sometimes, I know the truth is that I have the power within me to speak my word, because that power is within me. That very creative power that created everything is within me. And even though perhaps I haven't been a good receiver all the time in the past, I now declare I am a good receiver. I am open to receive all the good the universe has for me. I do my part to keep all the good in circulation for the good of all. And I'm grateful that this is the way the law works. Grateful that my seed planted into consciousness, and it is done unto me as I believe. I'm grateful for that. And I release these words now to the universe, knowing it is done, and so it is.